There's a warmth that lingers in my chest when I think of the days Mark and I spent together. Memories flood in like a sweet aroma from the kitchen, each scent a reminder of the late nights, home-cooked meals, and the laughter echoing in our small living room, where we built our world. I can still see him as a little boy, his room cluttered with action figures and crayon drawings, masterpieces in his eyes. I worked hard, sometimes taking extra shifts at the bakery just to ensure he had the things he needed. The soccer cleats, the art classes, the birthday parties that scattered colorful balloons throughout our backyard. I remember how we made pizza together. Flour dusted our hair, the dough springy and soft under his fingertips. "Just like that, Mom," he would exclaim, his eyes gleaming with joy, as if the world outside our kitchen ceased to exist. It was those simple moments that felt like a pact. I would give him everything I could, and in return he would share his vibrant life with me. Mark was the heart of my world. I stood by through every scraped knee, every lost soccer match, and every late-night study session leading up to his exams. His successes became mine. I can still hear his voice racing like a stream, sharing his achievements at school with pride. Ensconced in a world of hope and dreams, I let myself believe the bond we'd fostered was unbreakable. But as I reflect, I can see the first signs of what would become a fissure, a subtle shift that I brushed aside, convinced it was just life. It was when Rachel entered the picture, bringing a breath of fresh air along with the scent of chaos. At first she seemed perfect, charming and bubbly, seamlessly fitting into the family tapestry I had woven with utmost care. I welcomed her with open arms, offered her advice on settling into our tight-knit family, almost like passing down a cherished heirloom. Yet beneath that sugary sweetness, I missed the bite of her comments, snide remarks disguised as jokes, nudging me to question my relevance in Mark's new life. "Oh, Eleanor, you raised him well, but he's with me now," she once chortled at dinner, face alight with laughter while I felt the smack of her words as if I had been slapped. Mark would chuckle, dismissing my growing discomfort. "Come on, Mom, she's teasing," he would say, his eyes shining like I was the one making a fuss over nothing. The laughter of my family began to echo differently, like a mocking chorus slowly drowning out my voice. I wanted to tell him that it was more than teasing. It felt like an erasure, but I smiled, forcing my face into that well-practiced mask, even as my heart tightened. I wondered if he could notice the subtle way Rachel was beginning to steer him away from my world, our world. Those moments that should have been full-bodied celebrations morphed into insidious reminders of my place, showing me little by little that I was no longer the focus of his universe. As Rachel curried favor, I was relegated to a faded photograph on a lonely mantel. My once joyous rituals began to feel hollow against a backdrop of hidden contempt, their laughter ghost-like in my ears. Still, I held on, nursing my hope that the bond between Mark and me would weather any storm, blinded by love and sacrifice that seemed to count for nothing now. I closed my eyes, trying to grasp what was left of us, desperately clinging to those memories at the edge of my consciousness. But the laughter faded, leaving a chilling echo in its wake, and a sense of foreboding wrapped around me, my heart heavy with the weight of unspoken words and mounting loneliness. It still feels surreal to think back to the day Mark introduced Rachel to me. His excitement radiated off him in waves. I remember the crisp autumn afternoon, a cool breeze fluttering the leaves outside as he finally found his partner. I brewed a pot of chamomile tea, thinking of a cozy gathering. The kitchen was warm, brimming with the scent of cinnamon-spiced apples. I was determined to impress, excited to welcome the woman who had made my son so blissfully happy. When the doorbell rang, my heart fluttered with anticipation. Mark busted through the door, tugging Rachel behind him. She was a vision, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders and an infectious smile plastered on her face. "Hi, Eleanor. It's so lovely to meet you," she chirped, planting a kiss on my cheek, her tone sugary, sweet. I was charmed by her exuberance, the way she leaned into my space, enveloping me in her vibrant energy. This was it, I thought, the beginning of a beautiful family bond. Dinner was lively, with Rachel recounting her travel adventures to places I could only dream of. I hung on her every word, swept away by her tales, proud of Mark for choosing someone so bold and adventurous. Even in those early days, I could sense a subtle unease in my chest. It was like a small crack had split my world, though I couldn't yet see the fissure. But as months passed, the charming facade began to peel away, revealing a core that felt increasingly manipulative. I started to catch fleeting glances exchanged between Rachel and Mark, a cryptic language I could not decipher. It was in subtle comments that seemed innocent. "Eleanor, I thought we were going to do that together, right?" she'd say with a forced laugh, nudging a joke at my expense, making me feel the air shift slightly. Each time she playfully jabbed, I could feel a weight resting on my heart, pinching it tighter. At first, I brushed off her jibes, convinced they were harmless. I mistakenly thought becoming her ally might smoothen the transition. After all, it was a blessing to see Mark with someone who made him smile. I prepared her favorite meals whenever she visited, hoping to win her over, disarming her with kindness. But kindness only seemed to underscore my inadequacies in her eyes. I remember heading to the living room one Sunday afternoon, cradling a plate of fresh-baked cookies I hoped would please her. I found them cuddled on the couch, sharing laughter that felt like barbs, the kind meant to slice deeper than surface wounds. As I entered, Rachel flashed that practiced smile, the kind that glimmered like glass yet felt so cold. "Oh, look, it's Mark's other favorite woman," she remarked, her tone cutting, yet the lipstick on her smile gleaming false. I ached to feel warmth in my son's embrace, yet he stayed distant when I needed his support. "I brought cookies," I said, my voice bright even as it quivered. I wanted to bridge the gap, yet all I sensed was a cold wall rising between us. They continued their laughter, and I stood there, feeling like a ghost floating through the very house I had nurtured, my heart tethered to the ground. What stung the most was the silence from Mark. I could feel the words bubbling in my throat, wanting to challenge those barbed comments, but the moment I looked at him, his expression was evasive, eyes darting away as if he were afraid to associate with what was unfolding before him. I was losing him to his new world, and it broke me to pieces every day. And then came the family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, or even mundane Sundays where traditions once flourished. It seemed Rachel had begun to dictate what these gatherings could be. She expertly molded our family into her vision, dismissing my heartfelt traditions and suggesting her alternatives, like the time I prepared our annual Thanksgiving feast, expecting it to be a reenactment of past celebrations filled with love. Yet, as the guests arrived, all she could do was critique and redirect. "I thought we were going with turkey enchiladas this year," she asked innocently as I watched my meticulously crafted menu be tossed aside. I felt the air thicken, a charged atmosphere descending upon the table. Instead of stepping in to support my approach, Mark nodded, smiling as if to validate her. Each passing question from Rachel felt like a dagger to my heart. "Elaborate, Mom. It's a lot of work, right?" she teased, her words laced with condescension. I sat, setting the table, straightening the cutlery over and over again, convincing myself that tradition should matter. But all I could feel was the aching twinge of being rendered obsolete. I sensed my heart shatter like glass, shards cutting deep into my very core. The more Rachel poured forth her condescending barbs, the more despair wrapped me tightly, leaving me breathless. I adored my son with every fiber, but every interaction seemed as if she were deftly knitting threads of resentment right before my very eyes. I had given everything to raise him, yet Rachel stood there, redefining my identity even as I fought to maintain it. I could feel my worth dissipating, cracking under the weight of her contaminating jibes. Still, in those flickering moments of despair, I held on, grasping at the gleaming hope that perhaps Rachel's veneer would give way to something real. Little did I know, I was standing at the precipice of a painful awakening, unaware that the true manipulations were only just beginning to unravel in front of me. The weeks turned into months, stretching like elastic, but I felt their weight crushing me. Each gathering became a test, requiring endurance instead of joy. I was summoned to family dinners and birthday parties, all filled with an energy that felt radically altered. Now, festive laughter often included Rachel's sharp tongue. Her comments, once light-hearted, began to stab at me like thorns dressed in the guise of humor. At one Sunday brunch, the remnants of a salad clung to the plates as laughter filled the air. I watched Mark basking in Rachel's attention as he leaned closer to her on the couch. Just last week, we had spent a delightful afternoon cleaning out the attic, breathlessly recounting old memories. I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, our bond was strong enough to withstand whatever upheaval Rachel seemed to bring. "Mom, you really think the carbs are the secret ingredient here?" Rachel laughed, her mockery casual, a cut-to-the-bone acidity hidden behind her smiles. Mark chuckled along, oblivious to the warmth slipping away from my heart as I attempted to respond with a light-hearted quip. My tongue felt heavy, and the silence that followed her words shrank my resolve. I tried to console myself. She didn't mean it, did she? But with every conversation turned sideways, I felt the sting of her taunts claw deeper. I spent hours preparing a beautiful lasagna for a family gathering, imbuing it with love, laughter, and memories of the first time I had made it for Mark as a child. But as the table was set, Rachel breezed in, dismissing my dish with a wave. "Let's make it simple, right? Less fuss," she sang, betraying her playful tone with an edge of imperiousness. I watched as she replaced my lovingly prepared food with something prepackaged, a hollow stand-in that stung like betrayal. I felt my identity dissolve with every passing moment, clinging desperately to the past. Each chuckle Rachel exchanged with Mark began to pull me further into a void. I should have spoken up, but Mark's laughter wrapped around me, silencing any protest as I stood still, an unwilling spectator in my own family. It was during that Christmas party when I had found myself at my lowest. Eager to recreate the warmth of our shared past, I adorned the tree with handmade ornaments, touching pieces of family history, when Rachel swept in like winter's chill. "That's cute, Mom, but I think we need a modern touch," she said, tossing my creations aside for gaudy store-bought alternatives. Mark's deep chuckle only drove a wedge deeper into my heart. When I attempted to speak, asking for a moment of recognition, he barely heard me over his laughter as Rachel's attention captured him entirely. Time blurred as I found myself navigating through this loneliness, the reverberations of Rachel's insults echoing in my mind. I felt the sharp pinpricks of shame, the feeling of being an outsider in my own life. I attempted to sway Mark's attention to my feelings, crafting our conversations with care. "Honey," I ventured, trying to bridge the growing chasm, "Rachel doesn't always—" My voice faltered as he quickly interrupted, laughing dismissively. "You know Rachel. "She's just joking, Mom." His words, once comforting, now felt like daggers. I sought solace in solitude during the hours I wasn't surrounded by them, taking walks in the park, daring to think my thoughts. There, where flowers bloomed and chirps of birds replaced the laughter I longed for, I thought of how my efforts had begun to dissipate, obstacles stacked higher, drowning hope under the weight of Rachel's presence. Sometimes, while standing in the kitchen, I would close my eyes and imagine that Mark would notice the pain in my heart, the struggles I faced under the weight of his new life. Yet every family event pushed me further into the background. I could see their laughter spiraling like an endless loop, marking me more isolated with every cycle. I was not just losing Mark to Rachel, I was losing myself, my identity interwoven with the fibers of who I had been as a mother. The dissonance between who I was and who I felt trapped me in a cocoon of despair. The more Rachel dismissed my contributions, the heavier the air grew around me. In the quiet moments when I was alone, I could almost feel the fire of resilience flicker within me, battling against the shadow she cast over my life. But I knew this couldn't go on. Something would have to shift. I had to reclaim the joy and warmth that seemed to vanish with the advent of Rachel's presence. A calm determination began to form within me, far removed from the despair that had gripped my heart for too long. It was time to rise from the shadows she had cast and reclaim my dignity. I had to devise a plan that would restore my worth, a journey that would ignite my spirit again. Determined to reclaim my place, I knew I had to understand the full scope of Rachel's influence. I began observing the dynamics more closely, seeking to see beyond the surface smiles and shared laughter. Every encounter became a piece of a being puzzle, revealing the intricacies of Rachel's manipulation. Could I confront her? I had to tread carefully, for I knew that the wrong step could lead to an intensification of her smirks and my further isolation. Rachel often wielded humor like a weapon, and I was determined to uncover her methods. I decided to keep a journal, detailing not just events but my observations and feelings. Sitting at my kitchen table amidst the clinking of family dinnerware, I began to document the unsettling patterns I saw unfolding before me. Each entry became a lifeline, allowing me both to express my sorrow and to spotlight Rachel's veiled insults. I noted the moments where Mark would laugh at her jests, the way he'd lean into her more as she dismissed my efforts, treating them like mere inconveniences. My heart ached each time. His laughter echoed back at me, obscuring my voice in our shared life story. Rachel would capitalize on those moments, turning them into a performance of normalcy, while simultaneously belittling my contributions. During one of these reflections, I recalled an earlier family gathering where she had diverted attention from a heartfelt speech I had prepared for Mark's birthday. With an exaggerated sigh, she interrupted me, ridiculing the sentiment before the assembled guests. "Eleanor's mushy stuff again. Can't we stick to cake and ice cream? Come on." I remembered looking at Mark in that moment, hoping he would swoop in and defend me. But instead, he chuckled and blurred into the background, leaving me exposed before everyone. Days turned into weeks, and as my resolve strengthened, I began to search for broader patterns. I engaged in quiet conversations with family and friends, carefully weaving my inquiries into seemingly casual discussions. "What do you think of Rachel?" I'd ask, choosing my words with delicate precision. On a day when we were cleaning up after a family barbecue, I sought the opinion of my neighbor, an astute woman who always seemed to see right through people. We stood near the grill, arranging the last of the dishes. "You know, there's something about Rachel that doesn't sit right with me," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "It's like she's trying to charm everyone at the expense of someone else. I don't trust it." Hope sparked within me, further fueling my determination to uncover and confront Rachel's deceit. As I continued to watch Rachel's interactions with the family, I found subtle cues that indicated her ability to manipulate conversations. There were moments where she would present herself as a beacon of light, offering suggestions or sharing insights that aligned with Mark's interests while dismissing everything I contributed. It was as though she expertly crafted a narrative, one where I played the part of the unimportant figure in the backdrop. One afternoon, I arranged a family picnic, hoping to reinstate my connection with Mark. With the sun filtered through the trees and the air perfumed with freshly cut grass, I felt hopeful. I prepared his favorite sandwiches, fruit, and a homemade dessert. But as soon as we settled, Rachel arrived with pre-purchased platters, instantly diverting their attention. She laughed and made jokes, and the conversation spiraled into her typical banter. She effectively stole the spotlight, and I felt my efforts fade into the background once again. This time, I observed the reactions around me. Mark leaned eagerly toward Rachel, enthralled by her anecdotes. I watched my once vibrant son draw closer to her, his laughter mingling with hers, while I felt the sharp edges of isolation enclose me once more. Documenting all of these experiences, I began to gather evidence to counter Rachel's narrative. The awareness led me to realize I had allowed her to morph the image of who I was within our family. Each entry in my journal made me feel like I was building a case against her, actually formulating a plan rather than remaining a victim to circumstances. It was liberating, and as I did, it reinvigorated my belief in my worth, making me resolute. Yet, I also reminded myself that I had to go about this cautiously. All of Rachel's taunts had come with the guise of humor. Any confrontation needed to be tempered with careful planning. I began envisioning my strategy, focusing on how to insert clarity into the chaos. One evening, after yet another family gathering where I felt marginalized, I decided to confront my feelings directly, albeit quietly. I need to create boundaries, I whispered softly to myself while rocking in my chair, visualizing a world where Rachel no longer dictated my role, a world where my voice mattered, where I returned to being the matriarch I once was. I started by drafting a list of boundaries, items that framed clear expectations for family interactions. Each guideline was a vow to myself. I would no longer allow sarcasm to unsettle me. My contributions would be documented. I would remain visible and vocal, demanding acknowledgement. I began to practice assertive affirmations in front of the mirror, each statement echoing within my mind like a mantra. No more silence. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. I would say it aloud, asserting my commitment to engage and stand firm against Rachel's bullying. In an unexpected turn, I stumbled upon an old family photo album that I had kept stored away. Flicking through the pages filled my heart with nostalgia. The images showcased moments of laughter, love, and connection with my son. With a surge of inspiration, I decided that the next family gathering would be an opportunity to invite laughter back into our home, this time infused with stories that I and Mark could share, stories that celebrated our bond that had been overshadowed. I began crafting a plan, one that would invite Rachel into a situation she couldn't manipulate easily, and one that would display my growth before my family. If I could highlight the connection Mark and I once shared while weaving in moments that showcased my resilience, perhaps a shift would begin to foster positive change. It all ignited a courage within me that felt long buried and forgotten. I was no longer merely surviving. I was stepping into a role that demanded respect, reaffirming my place within this family and shining a light on the darkness Rachel had instilled. I was ready to face her with the dignity I had almost lost and gain the voice I so desperately needed. The time for reclamation was upon me. The day finally arrived for our family gathering, and I could feel the nervous energy swirling within me. I had meticulously planned every detail, from the menu to the ambiance, aiming to create a space filled with warmth and heartfelt connections. The dinner table was adorned with the vibrant colors of autumn leaves and handcrafted decorations, echoing the love that had been lost and reminding everyone of the beauty weaving through our family's fabric. When Rachel arrived, I noted her initial reaction. She paused at the threshold, her eyebrows slightly raised and her lips curled in a way that suggested that I had put her on notice. I met her gaze with confidence, my heart racing, but this time I wouldn't back down. Today was about reclaiming my worth, about showcasing not just who I was, but also the love I had poured into our family through years of nurturing. "Eleanor, nice setup," she remarked, her voice edged with a touch of sarcasm. "You really went all out, huh?" "Thank you, Rachel," I replied, my tone steady. I wanted us all to feel at home and reconnect with each other. I could feel Mark's supportively puzzled gaze on me, and that single glance seemed to ignite a flicker of hope. I had to keep my resolve steady. Dinner unfolded as anticipated, and with each course that arrived, I seized the moment to introduce stories from our family's past, times filled with joy, laughter, and the small moments that defined our lives together. As I served the homemade roast chicken, I shared with enthusiasm how I had learned the recipe from my mother. "This was our family's tradition on special occasions," I began, the memory warming my heart. "Mark loved helping me in the kitchen, stirring the gravy and sneaking bites of the stuffing." I noticed Mark's face change, his eyes lighting up as he chimed in. "Look at you, Mom. I remember trying to steal those bits of stuffing while you weren't watching." Laughter bubbled up at the table, a beautiful sound threading its way through the atmosphere as I made eye contact with Rachel. She shifted in her seat, an uncharacteristic discomfort alighting on her face. Each anecdote I shared tore down the impenetrable wall Rachel had built between us. I navigated through the stories, determined to illuminate this familial bond, to showcase what mattered most in our clan: love. And with each heartwarming memory I drew upon, I felt the weight of Rachel's power starting to wane. Midway through the meal, I noticed her fidgeting. The confident smirk I had witnessed on earlier occasions evaporated as I caught a glimpse of uncertainty settling in her expression. I pressed on. "And remember our camping trips at the lake, Mark? You told me about wanting to cast your fishing line out farther than anyone else." Mark grinned. "Yeah, and didn't you catch that massive fish that day? I was so jealous." The warmth flowed, as the stories intertwined with moments of shared laughter. Regardless of Rachel's comments, it seemed that the barricade she had built was slowly crumbling. She could see that, for once, the stories revived our relationship. When dessert was served, I brought out a pie filled with the apples from my own backyard, a labor of love that had been inspired by those old photographs. "This," I remarked, "is the recipe I used to teach Mark when he was little, with the freshest apples." As Mark took a slice, he qualified proudly, "Mom makes the best pies. Rachel, even you have to admit that." Rachel cleared her throat, the fissures in her walls appearing more prominent by the minute. "It's great, but I think we should try a new recipe next time, right, Mark?" she replied, attempting to regain her footing, but her voice lacked conviction. "Actually," I interjected with a soft smile, "I'd love to continue our family traditions, and I'd like to keep including you, Rachel, as part of this process. Your suggestions could help enhance what we have." All eyes shifted to Rachel, and something shifted in the air. I had recovered enough strength to invite her in rather than further isolate her. It was a subtle tactic, one I had concocted in my quest to reaffirm my place within this family. Perhaps this invitation would serve as a bridge, coaxing Rachel out of the shadows into a brighter light, one that didn't diminish my contributions. The room fell silent for a moment, and I could sense the internal gears turning within Rachel, her walls starting to crack. For once, she appeared unsure, as if the confidence she typically wielded so effortlessly had stumbled into uncertainty. As the meal drew to a close, I prepared to take the final step, a way to solidify my reclaiming of space as a meaningful piece of our family. In light of the memories we've shared tonight, I began, my voice firm yet gentle, I'd like us to start a family tradition. Let's dedicate the month of November to share stories each Sunday, memories that have shaped us and that will help build our future. How does that sound? Mark's eyes sparkled with joy, and he immediately nodded. That's a fantastic idea, Mom. Rachel hesitated, a flicker of annoyance passing across her features. I could almost see her scrambling for some witty comeback or snarky dismissal she often used to deflect. But instead, she hesitated, breath catching, as if considering how even she couldn't push away the joy radiating through our table. Sure, I guess I could help, she finally replied, her reply needing to hold on to this season and carving spaces I would not allow her to diminish. But the weariness that began to coat her voice hinted at vulnerability, crumbling the fortress she had woven tightly around herself. I had shifted the dynamics tonight, and I could feel the strengthened bond with Mark, the connection thriving amid the laughter echoing warm against my heart. I took in a deep breath, the air laden with hope against a backdrop of celebration. Suddenly, Rachel's gaze met mine. I sensed she could feel her hold over our interaction slowly loosening. That realization cracked a barrier, exposing both of us to a world where openness could turn the tide into something healthier for our family. As I reflected on the evening, I knew I was unveiling the true story my family had been obliviously living in a cocoon of norms. Slowly, the narrative I had fought to reclaim began to flourish, glimmering with the potential of deeper connections and renewed love. I could feel the pieces aligning, beckoning me to step further into a new narrative, one where vulnerability birthed strength and harmony reigned. Rachel had succeeded in molding our interactions for far too long, but I was gently reminding her that the importance of our family bond could not be easily overshadowed. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but for today I felt triumphant, ready to navigate whatever lay ahead. Together, Sunday morning dawned, bright and hopeful, the air crackling with the excitement of possibility. I awoke with a flutter of nerves dancing in my stomach while preparing for our family's storytelling session. The house was transformed into a cozy haven, adorned with soft pillows and inviting blankets scattered around the floor. I had set up a refreshment table brimming with a variety of treats, everything from homemade pastries to fruits like crisp apples and juicy pears, symbols of the warmth I hoped we'd cultivate together. The kitchen hummed with activity as I baked the final touches on a selection of goodies, the comforting scents wrapping around me like a hug. The sound of the oven timer chiming was a reassuring rhythm, syncing with my heartbeat, reminding me of my purpose. I wanted this gathering to be special, a moment where laughter could drown out tension, a space where we could begin bit by bit to heal. When Mark arrived, his youthful exuberance echoed in the air, filling the room with sunlight. "Mom, it smells incredible in here." His smile shone like a beacon against the dim corners of the day. "Thanks, sweetheart. I've prepared some special treats for our first storytelling session," I replied, my heart swelling at the joy radiating from him. As the hour approached, I felt a familiar surge of anxiety. Would Rachel embrace this new tradition, or would she try to undermine it, as she often did? The doubt gnawed at the edges of my optimism, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was stepping into this role with resolve. When Rachel walked in, she wore her usual confident demeanor, an armor of bravado designed to deflect any criticism. "Hey, Eleanor, are you really doing this whole storytelling thing again?" There was an edge to her tone, implying she was prepared to dismiss it outright. "Just a small gathering to connect with family and share our memories," I stated lightly. "We can all contribute. It could be fun." Mark settled at the center of our makeshift circle, ready to share his first story, a humorous moment from a recent camping trip. Laughter bubbled forth, creating a warm bubble around us that seemed to soften the sting of Rachel's remarks. I watched as her shields began to waver under the affection and camaraderie building within the room. When it was my turn, I recounted a cherished family vacation filled with unexpected joy and laughter. "Remember the time we got lost on that hiking trail? I thought we'd never find our way back," I shared, the warmth of nostalgia washing over me. Rachel raised an eyebrow, her sarcastic tendencies rising. "That sounds boring," she remarked, rolling her eyes. Something within me stirred, but rather than taking her bait, I reminded myself of my mantra. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. It may seem boring, Rachel, but it's a cherished memory for us. This gentle but firm response felt like an anchor amidst the turbulence that had often swirled around us. Mark smoothly guided the conversation, returning it to humor. "Yeah, and Mom lost her shoes in that mudslide," he chuckled, his laughter infectious. The tension began to lift as the bonds of our shared stories enveloped us, slowly unraveling Rachel's control over the gathering. As the stories wove together, I could feel a shift in the atmosphere. With each shared moment, I saw Rachel's demeanor soften. The laughter flowed freely, filling the spaces between us, but I remained alert, aware that she might still attempt to derail our progress. When dessert arrived, my homemade apple pie, adorned with a flurry of cinnamon and sugar, I set it on the table like the centerpiece it had become. "This pie represents our family traditions. It's a little slice of home," I stated, hoping to evoke warmth and connection. Rachel hesitated before reaching for a piece. "Looks good," she admitted, her tone lacking its usual bite. A hint of vulnerability crossed her features, making me wonder if the earlier conversations had begun to crack her armor. As the gathering flowed seamlessly into games and laughter, I watched the collective joy envelop us, and for the first time in as long as I remembered, I felt a deep sense of belonging. The game started employing our stories, each turn reinforcing our shared history, and Rachel's comments lessening with each passing moment. I could feel us, as a family, reclaiming time together. We teased each other and played up stories until we were breathless with laughter. I glanced at Rachel periodically, her smile now genuine instead of forced. I could see pieces of her icy exterior beginning to melt, even if only slightly. Towards the end of the evening, as we settled down from playing, Liz, my neighbor and a close friend, turned to Rachel. "You know, Rachel, this was really nice. I think you added quite a bit to the stories, too." Caught off guard, Rachel blinked as if truly hearing for the first time just how inclusive this gathering had been. I seized the moment, turning toward her. "You were part of this family's legacy today, Rachel. Thank you for sharing with us. It is important, and we'd love to hear more." For a moment, she looked almost human. "I guess I didn't realize how much I missed this," she replied softly. Her walls were tumbling down, piece by piece, like the facade she had constructed through years of conflict. As the night wound down, I sensed the evening had transformed us, bound us, and allowed us to reclaim the rhythm that had been disrupted for so long. When Rachel left, I felt a wave of relief mixed with joy. We had made strides I hadn't thought possible. As I climbed into bed later that evening, I reflected on how much had changed in a single day. My heart was lighter, filled with love and hope. I whispered my mantra, letting it resonate with each breath. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight felt triumphant. Together, we began to weave a new story, one built on connection, truth, and shared laughter. The following Sunday brought a renewed sense of hope, like fresh dew on the grass at dawn. I woke early, my heart racing with anticipation for our second storytelling session. The kitchen buzzed with energy as I prepared a new dish, a savory quiche, a departure from last week's treats. Each ingredient chopped and stirred felt like an offering toward a fresh start. When Mark arrived, his enthusiasm was infectious. "Mom, it smells amazing. I can't wait for today." His smile was a beacon, igniting a warmth within me. "Thanks, sweetheart. I've got something special planned for us." I felt the buoyancy in my chest as I envisioned laughter and connection filling the room once again. Rachel entered shortly after, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "What's cooking today?" She softened, an almost imperceptible change from her usual bravado. "A quiche, an experiment," I replied, my heart steady with optimism. As we settled into our circle, the air crackled with an unfamiliar optimism. Rachel chose to lead off the stories, opening up about a recent work project. "It was really stressful, but I managed to surprise my team," she said, sharing her challenges and small victories. Mark chimed in, engaged and excited, his relaxed demeanor smoothing the edges of the conversation. I sensed an openness between them, a silent reassurance that we were all attempting to mend the delicate fractures within our family. When it was my turn, I chose to reveal a deeper story from my past while Mark was growing up. I spoke about the balance of work and familial love, how I had to strive for that equilibrium while navigating the struggles of single motherhood. It wasn't easy, but those challenges shaped us, I expressed, glancing at Rachel to gauge her reaction. Rachel responded with a thoughtful nod. "We all have our battles to fight," she said, her tone softer. I could feel the walls she built shifting. The stories began flowing more freely, draining the tension from our circle like water through an open drain. I shared laughter, sorrows, and memories, allowing the threads of our shared history to weave us closer together. In those moments, the skin between us felt thinner, and the air became filled with a potent mix of vulnerability and strength. Towards the end of the gathering, Liz, my neighbor, commented, "Rachel, you really added a lot today. It feels like we're building something together." Caught off guard, Rachel blinked as if she hadn't expected acknowledgement. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," she replied, a tremor in her voice. For the first time, she looked human. Her defenses cracked, allowing a glimpse of the woman beneath the armor. With a mixture of pride and tenderness, I said, "You belong here, Rachel. All of us do. Your story matters." The room fell into a silence heavy with shared understanding. Mark reached out, squeezing Rachel's hand. "We've all been through a lot, but it counts more when we share, you know?" Seeing Rachel's eyes glisten with the possibility of connection made my heart swell. In that instant, I realized we were not just retelling old tales. We were crafting a new narrative, one filled with empathy, encouragement, and acceptance. As the gathering concluded, I confirmed the bond we had begun to forge. I whispered my mantra softly to myself, grounding me in the strength I felt blooming within. They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. With each story shared, each wall crumbled, we were redesigning our family's narrative. one where laughter ignited healing, carving a path toward unity in the sanctuary of our home.